This week, True North broke a well-researched story itemizing 138 times the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, blamed his mistakes and failures on Stephen Harper, Andrew Scheer, or the Conservatives in general. Of course, that was only in the House of Commons when he bothered to attend. It does not include interviews or speeches when he did exactly the same thing. It's never his fault, you see, no matter what. But the granddaddy of all deflect blame statements came not from the Prime Minister, but from the newly resurrected Gerald Butts, as quoted in an excerpt from John Ivison's new book, Trudeau, The Education of a Prime Minister. Speaking of the now infamous trip to India in February of 2018, Butts said, quote, "We walked into a buzzsaw. Modi and his government were out to screw us and were throwing tacks under our tires to help Canadian Conservatives who did a good job of embarrassing us. But none of that is the core issue. Nobody would remember any of it had it not been for the photographs," unquote. So according to Butts, it's Modi's fault Trudeau appeared in all manner of silly costumes, with his whole family in front of several of India's famous places, or was recorded in costume doing his impression of a Bhangra dance, which went viral on social media and instantly destroyed his credibility and Canada's relations with the world's largest democracy. It didn't help that he brought along a convicted Sikh independence terrorist either. He might well have stuck his finger in Prime Minister Modi's eye. But it doesn't end there. Earlier this week he held a press conference at the Kitsilano Coast Guard Station and was questioned by Vancouver journalist Bob Mackin about his frequent flights to the West Coast, primarily for fundraisers, and whether the Liberal Party of Canada shouldn't be paying for it.
Mr. Bob Mackin, the Breaker.News. This is your fifth trip to British Columbia since May 22nd. You've got a Cash for Access fundraiser tonight. You've had two on May 22nd. You had one last week in Victoria. You've been flying out at great frequency. I know there's an election approaching, but by calculations of experts, it's more than 10,000 liters of fuel, jet fuel, to go back and forth between Vancouver and Ottawa, and about 20 tons of CO2. And you're also spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, which would be idiots to find out, especially with access to information and that system that you actually haven't improved as you probably would in 2015. Why isn't the Liberal Party of Canada paying the entire bill of your trips out to British Columbia at this time?
BC is a second home to me. This is a part of the country that matters deeply, and too often decisions made in Ottawa have negative impacts here in BC when people aren't connected here on the ground.
He ducked, he dived, and he tried to offload blame on Harper again. To his credit, Mackin tried to hold his feet to the fire on the question of cost, and Trudeau said it was his greatest pleasure as Prime Minister to fly around the country. He neglected to mention it's on the taxpayer's dime. The arrogance and entitlement and refusal to accept any sort of accountability is shameless. As I speak to you, he is on, by my count, flight number 127 of this year, heading a few thousand kilometers to Iqaluit to make an announcement. He will then fly another 1,200 kilometers from there to take part in some sort of Arctic feast. Flight 129 will then return him to Ottawa. Fundraisers, funding announcements, and photo ops, that's all he is doing in this pre-election period, and all paid for by taxpayers. We're barely 200 days into the year, and he has spent more time on taxpayer-funded flights, burning hundreds of thousands of liters of fuel, emitting God knows how much carbon emissions as he rams his carbon tax down the throats of Canadians. And for all that, he takes no blame and no responsibility. For True North, I'm Leo Knight. Unlike some in the mainstream media or the CBC, we are 100% funded by you, our supporters. If you like what you see on True North, please visit tnc.news and click the donate link. Thank you for supporting independent journalism.